Hello, everyone. My name is Kumia Ross, and today I'm talking about how CPS and Juvenile Court System operates. Now, yesterday I had a court trial. It was scheduled for October 29th. The original trial was scheduled back in September. If any of you looked at my court custody trial hearing I posted back in August, I had a trial in August with the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court Systems. It was presided over by Magistrate Stephen Miles. And at that time, my attorney, who was assigned to me, my court appointed attorney, had completely decided to walk off the case and left me to defend myself. Um, the reason why my daughter's trial was rescheduled because the Children and Family Services had two different motions. They wanted to send my son home but keep my daughter. And this has been going on where I talked about before, where they were intentionally doing this because they came to me. The caseworker told me that they wanted to keep her till she was 18. And they had a program they were planning on keeping her till she was 18. Now, my daughter said she wanted to come home, and I said I wanted my daughter to come home as well. They had intentionally delayed family therapy. I talked about that, how they started family therapy with me and my son, and it was delayed for months. With my daughter, it was delayed over a year before we had family therapy, and they used that as one of the reasons why they didn't want to send my daughter home, and the fact that, oh, my therapy wasn't complete and all these other things. Now, they scheduled at that time. They said the magistrate said he wanted to have some type of in-person video recording with my daughter. They're going to ask her some questions, I guess, to see if she wanted to come home and everything. So that was done, and they had scheduled a trial to be in person for the end of September. If you go back and listen to that video, now I received a letter in the mail. So these are the tactics they play. These are delay tactics. I received a letter from the court indicating that that trial will be held in September, but will be a telephonic hearing. So I had called concerned because I know it was supposed to be in person. And so they said, oh, yes, it's over the phone. Okay. So a month later, when the court trial was supposed to happen, I get a text message from my caseworker saying, oh, they delayed it and rescheduled it to the end of October to be on October 29th now because it was supposed to be in person. Now, like I said, this was already supposed to be in person, but they scheduled it for over the phone. And this was a tactic that had been pulled before by Magistrate Jody Wallace with her when around the time COVID first, this is when my kids were first placed in foster care, and COVID had just came, and I was concerned at that time about my son because he was being held in a child care room. So many things are going on. Then he was in a group home, and he was exposed to numerous residents, a lot of different residents and staff, many staff coming in and out. And at that time, they were saying COVID, could be possibly fatal for people with underlying conditions such as diabetes and asthma. My son has asthma, a chronic illness. And so I was concerned about him being exposed to all of those, different staff coming in and out and all the children. Not only that, there were other things going on in the group's home. So I would file motions that she kept holding in abeyance and not addressing those motions. And she kept delaying. Our court date would say each month when it get close to trial, she would delay it for another month, saying due to COVID. Now, at this time, other courts in different states and other parts of the county were holding telephonic trials. They were holding virtual hearings or hearings over the phone. So she kept delaying my stuff instead of rescheduling for a telephonic hearing. She kept delaying it while my children were suffering in foster care. So I finally reached out to the Ohio Supreme Court and filed a grievance. And that is when the next month after that, she made our trial telephonic instead of actually rescheduling it. And so then what they did was she did the same thing. She told me over the phone that we would have an in-hearing court date, and then they waited into the next month and scheduled an actually trial, a hearing over the phone. And so it was like some of the same games. So let's go back to the trial I was supposed to have yesterday. So after delaying it for another month by scheduling it for a telephonic hearing instead of in-person hearing, we finally were supposed to have our in-person trial yesterday on October 29th. Now, I received a letter from the court indicating that my trial was supposed to be held at 9 o'clock. Now, my caseworker, her and her supervisor, they always get these they get the information from the court when the trial is supposed to be, because sometimes she'll even text me and let me know. So she knew beforehand when the trial was, but she did not show up. The trial was at 9 o'clock. She did not come until 9:29. So they adjourned the court, dismissed everyone, and said, we're going to reschedule because she's not here. And so after they rescheduled, probably a couple minutes after they adjourned everyone, she walked in at 9:29. And so they tried to reconvene the court and start the trial. But my daughter's attorney had actually left, and they could not contact her, or they say they couldn't reach her. They portrayed the reacher. I don't know. All I know is there are tactics being done. So we ended up having to delay the trial once again, and now it's held in December. So here's my thing. It's like, They have all these tactics. I've been waiting for my children to come home for the longest. My son's finally here. He came home in August, but I've been waiting for my daughter to come home, and now it's like all these tactics where my uh, caseworker claims she thought the court case was supposed to happen at 9:30, so she walks in at 9:29. Like I said, I don't know, but if I receive a letter from the court saying it's at 9 o'clock, shouldn't you have that same information? That's what I say. These are tactics and games they're playing. It was no coincidence that she suddenly decided to come in at 9:30 and say, "Oh well, this is stuff is pre-planned to give them more time." These are the games that they play, delayed tactics that they've been playing, and it goes on all over this entire country. Now, I, you know, I raised concerns about my child, concerns I felt where she's being neglected, other things. And it's like, these things aren't addressed. These things are not looked at, or they're swept under the rug, and they handle it within their little, system. And there's no one to speak up for the children or the parents. And this is how you get tragedies like Terrell Peterson or Gabriel Fernandez or Nayade Garrett or even Mandisa Sizemore, because these children, the courts are not, taking any of the concerns seriously, or they don't know all the information is not relayed back to them by children family services or child protective services. All these things are covered up, and you have children who are left in abusive situations where the court cases are delayed continuously, or children are placed in environments where they're neglected. And it's like these CPS, this is happening all over the country where they do this all the time. They'll come in the home and take children out a lot of times for minor things where the parents couldn't get help, or if they need some type of help, they're not offering them the services to help them. They just go in and remedy it by taking their children out and removing them from the homes. But a lot of times this is not remedying the situation. These children are faced and placed in situations where they're either subjected with abuse or neglect. I talked before about how I felt my daughter was being neglected, but no concerns were taken seriously on my behalf. I talked about a lot of things, how my daughter's gained significant amount of weight and was left, unattended and ended up losing her virginity. A lot of these things had happened where my daughter was exposed to some things. Now, my daughter could have easily been a statistic like Gabriel Fernandez or any of these other children, but I pray for her every day. So good thing my daughter's not, being subjected to that type of, situation, because I'm praying for her on a constant basis. But the thing is, there are other children out here who do not get any help. There's no one to advocate for them. You get appointed an attorney who's supposed to represent you, but a lot of times these attorneys really don't do much to represent you. They're overloaded with other cases. They have a ton of cases because they've taken so many children out of the homes. And with me, all the attorneys that I've been given, all my court appointed attorneys, I didn't even meet with them they didn't reach out to speak to me to the day before, or I didn't speak to them until actually right before my trial was about to start, 5 minutes before my trial. Now, my current attorney, who I have now, I decided to initiate contact by reaching out to her first. I reached out to her and gave her a phone call probably the second week of October, because I'm thinking like, hey, we have a court trial coming up, because she hadn't reached out to me. And I said, well, maybe we need to be discussing some of the concerns I have with this case. And that's what I was thinking. But like I said, she hadn't reached out to me. I called her and left a message. So she ended up calling me back a few days later while I was working. I did not get a chance to answer the phone. So when I tried to call her again, she wasn't available to answer it. And so finally, the night before the trial, she texted me and said, oh, we keep missing each other. And I didn't speak to her until the day of the trial, right 5 minutes before, where we talked about my concerns. So how is someone supposed to represent you properly if they can't even meet with you and talk with you and have enough time and attention given to your court case and get to know the client who they're supposed to be representing? And this is the setup that they have all along. The juvenile court systems are not trying to protect us or defend our rights. They're not giving us adequate representation. They give us court-appointed attorneys who are going to do the bare minimum to actually fight for us, if they do that at all. Like I said, my last court-appointed attorney walked out on me right before the trial was supposed to start, a very crucial and important trial where I was trying to get my children back. And he walked out on me and decided to leave during that. And these are the games that are played. And this is how children are caught up in the system. A lot of children are end up being kept in abusive situations. Some of them even die. And there are a lot of them who are statistics, much more than just the few I mentioned, because every case is not going to be known like Gabriel Fernandez's case or Terrell Peterson or Anaya Garrett. A lot of times you don't even hear about it. There are children who are suffering in silence. They're being subjected to abuse and neglect every single day. and nothing's being done. This is a corrupt, wicked system where there is no one to speak out for the families, because a lot of them, like me, we are underrepresented because we don't have money. We don't have a platform to speak out, and no one cares. No one speaks up for us or helps us. I've reached out myself to political figures, or public figures actually, who portray themselves as caring about the Black community. And I'm not saying these people don't, but the thing is, I reached out for their help, people such as Boyce Watkins and Sean King, and I don't even know if they read these messages or not, but no one has contacted me. Out of all the videos I made, even the books I've written and the podcasts that I recorded, no one has reached out to help me or interview me or even try to bring awareness to the case that I'm going through. And there's so many families like me who end up like me with no one to help us. And it's like the only time you really hear about them is if there's a tragedy that happens, then everyone wants to pretend that they care, but no one does anything to stop the tragedies. No one does anything when these people are crying out for help. Even with the church, I can't even get someone from the church to help. And this is something that's happening. God put my kids in this environment, this situation to show me what's going on. And I've done everything I can to speak out. But like I said, I don't have much of a platform. I don't have much of a following or much influence at all. And I can get my voice. My voice can only go so far. I reach out to people for help and there's no one to say anything. So it's going to have to come a point now where God himself is going to have to fight against this wicked, disgusting, corrupt system, because this has been going on for decades, where these people have been allowed to do this and they get away with it because there's no one to stand up for the poor. There's no one to stand up for those. We don't get equal rights. They're pretty much breaking our constitutional rights, because we're supposed to have proper representation. We don't. We're supposed to have speedy trials. But like you said, in the case of, if you've seen in the case of Khalif Browder, his court cases, he was locked up without even having a trial, and it was delayed, and he ended up spending 3 years, wrongfully spending 3 years in a prison in Rikers Island, and he was subjected to abuse, mistreatment, and solitary confinement while there. When he came out, he ended up committing suicide. Why does it have to end up in a tragedy like in the case of Khalif Browder or Gabriel Fernandez or Terrell Peterson, when people are not standing up to help these people who don't have a voice, people who don't have money? The poor are being mistreated and oppressed, and there's no one to speak up about it. And the thing is, I heard recently, I don't know if it's true, that the Biden administration were trying to come up with something where they would give reparations to the families of the immigrants, the illegal immigrants who came over here and had their children separated from them at the border. Well, where are the reparations for the families who have had their children taken by CPS and Children Family Services for years, wrongfully taken out of the home, and they've been separated? Or those who have been abused, who have been put in abusive situations, who are American citizens of this country, who have had their rights violated, and they have their constitutional rights violated, and they have not been given their equal rights in this country, and they're having their children taken out of home for minor things, and their children are subjected to abuse and neglect and mistreatment. Where is it? Where are the reparations for the Black families who've had their children taken out of the homes because they were on drugs, and they were addicted to drugs because, the government gets to put drugs into the community? We know how that gets here, but they're not being locked up for the things they've done to destroy the Black race. And then we suffer the detrimental effects. And again, there's really no one that's doing anything about it or speaking up. The Blacks have been owed reparations that we have not gotten. And free housing, public housing, where you have criminals and all kinds of situations going on that you're not even trying to stop because you want that to happen. I've lived in public housing before, and trust me, it's a nightmare. It's something you don't even want to raise your children up in, because there's criminals running rampant, drugs, abuse, all kinds of it. They do it right in the hallway. As soon as you walk in the hall, you see them having drug exchanges. Person got shot and killed right above my head, right on the floor above me. And they say, oh, those are our reparations. They give us free housing. No, those are not reparations. We want equal rights. We want opportunities like everyone else. We want opportunities to have a better life, and we're not getting it. We don't have just rights when you can come in our home and lie and take our kids out of this house without even giving someone a mental health evaluation, but slander them and say they have a mental illness, which was in my case. But I didn't get a mental health evaluation till months later, and they refused to even give me the diagnosis. They said they can't show that to me, the client. But yet you could take my kids out of a home based on something that says that I have a mental illness, but you cannot show me the diagnosis. You can't even show my attorney this diagnosis. This is what I'm saying. Our rights have been violated. And children are suffering every day, and there's no one to fight for us because we have no money, and no one cares about the poor, especially the Black poor people in this country. You claim to care about them, but you don't. Because if you cared, things will be different. If you cared, there'll be action. There'll be people speaking up and advocating for our rights. There wouldn't be children dying and being abused in foster care today. Now, I'm speaking out on this. I don't know how much this is going to help, because I woke up very frustrated today after this. I cried because I want my daughter to come home. And I'm tired of being separated from my daughter. She left this home. She was taken from me at 15 years old, a week before she turned 16. I didn't even get to see her or wish her a happy birthday on her 16th birthday because I didn't even know where she was. A special needs child separated from her family, and we couldn't even speak to her. Didn't know her whereabouts. Now, my daughter has been gone now for almost 2 years, and they keep delaying it and doing everything in their power to keep delaying it. And we have not been given a fair trial. We have not been given fair representation or anything. And it's like, yes, I'm crying and I'm asking God because I want my child to come home. But so many children are suffering. So many families are going through the same situations like me, and they have no one to bring awareness or to speak out and help them. And this is why Child Protective Services and the government gets away with doing these wicked, evil things. Because people just brush on the rug and they look at us like we're dung, like we're nothing, or we deserve it because we're poor or the situation or circumstances that we're in. And that's sad. I feel like, I felt like giving up, and that's what they want us to do. They want the parents to give up because it's like we feel like there's no hope fighting against this huge, organization, this entity that is so powerful that no one can come up against them. The only one who can stand against them is God. And I woke up this morning, I said, I felt like just erasing every YouTube video I put on this channel because I said, Lord, what's the point? What is the point? You tell me to make these videos to expose it. You tell me to write these books and no one even looks at, no one cares. And the ones who do care, either they don't care and they're too selfish and they're only worried about themselves, or the ones who care are too afraid to even say anything or speak out and help. And I said, what's the use? And so this is my final play. This is my final chance making this video, thinking that hopefully it will lead to something. But I have very little hope right now. I guess it's going to come to the point where God himself is going to have to move and destroy everything about this corrupt system himself, since those who he have appointed to help and those he tried to get to help us are not doing anything or moving. He's going to have to do it that way because his children are suffering and dying, and he can't keep allowing that to happen. And that's all I had to say for now. Thank you.